Well, hello there, you've come at a great time. My name's Jack, and today we're checking out a compilation of stories with updates and some standalone, centered around the theme, people making terrible choices. All for your viewing pleasure and Schadenfreude. I probably butchered that German word, but hey, let's go to the first story. I found out what really happens when you demand to get off the plane for love and accidentally shut down an airport. So this one's dumb and also kinda sad. This happened 16 years ago, and it felt like a romantic comedy from the start. Yeah, the meet cute was at a bank call center in India. I was the awkward, goofy 26-year-old American guy they'd flown out to train their employees on how to talk to Americans. But their employees were too busy talking to Americans to attend my training, so I just sat silently, alone, in a cubicle for days at a time. But she always took the time to talk to me. She'd put her customer on hold and wave me over just to joke about how weird they were. It was supposed to be my job to tell her to lower her average handling time, but I couldn't say no. Things went a little less smoothly when we met outside of work. She came from a very traditional, religious family that believed in arranged marriages, so dating or kissing were out of the question. I had also never dated or kissed anyone myself, but only because I was a shy dork. So instead of planning romantic expeditions, we had adventurous ones. After gossiping at work about a wild monkey that the news said was on the loose in town, we went out the next day to find it and pet it. After talking about the world's largest outdoor laundry, she took me there and helped me bribe my way into the off-limit parts and join the line of workers. We explored ancient palaces. We climbed into craters caused by ancient meteorites. We had fun. And a couple of times, when no one was looking, we even held hands. We had something, but we didn't quite know what. She made me promise not to tell anyone, even if I knew what there was to tell. Sometimes we were inseparable. Sometimes she'd be terrified of something seeing us together and tell me to go away. There were times she seemed really mad at me and I didn't know why. I mean, was it culture or was she embarrassed by me? After a year passed and my time in India was coming to a close, I still couldn't tell if she liked me or not. I was afraid to ask, and since everyone I knew in the country worked at the same call center, there was no sassy best friend to run my feelings by. That sassy friend has to be black too, remember that. It's one of the 10 testaments to a Christmas Hallmark movie. Oh, but I'd seen rom-coms. I knew that's how it worked. Will they, won't they was the only way I knew. I'd seen stories of couples that didn't know how they felt. I'd seen stories of couples who outright hated one another. Miscommunications and misunderstandings so intense that one of the parties up and got on a plane to get as far away from the other as they could for the rest of their lives. But there was always a moment, one grand gesture that fixed everything. That scene in the movie where the guy on the plane realizes how he feels and shouts, "I'm getting off the plane because I'm in love!" Then everyone applauds uproariously, and he runs to meet the girl to live happily ever after. I just had to wait for that moment. But it never came. I already had my flight out of the country booked. I was moving to another country in about a month. I told her how much I was going to miss her. She turned to me and said, "I have this fantasy that we could be together, somewhere far away, where my family wasn't controlling every decision I made, where no one knew us, no one judged us." I said, "We could. You could come with me." She said yes. Okay, so they've confessed their love for one another. Surely this is a happy ending to things, right? They just gotta make the grand escape. Now, her visa was going to be a while, and she didn't want everyone to notice us leaving together. So we agreed that I would leave first, and she would follow me once the visa arrived. I had saved up about 10 grand for the trip, so I used a quarter of the money to rent and set up a beautiful house for us. And then I waited for months. It was rough to keep in touch. Time zones weren't an issue because she worked nights to assist American customers. The issue was the call center where she spent most of her waking hours. Since every computer had access to the financial records of millions of customers, there were no mobile devices or outside internet access allowed. I kind of hacked one of the largest financial institutions on the planet. I got through their firewall and set up a little chat program that she could access from inside her workstation. Hypothetically, we could have used this site to pull off to steal billions, but instead, we just used it to flirt. Now, okay, this part might seem a bit BS to actually believe, and you might be calling this story fake. So Opie later explains all this in a comment, which I'll just read now so we're kept in context. They explain that I cut out how dumb it actually was because my story was already very long. So the call center I worked for had super tight security, even airport level security at the door. But their firewall was the laziest thing in the world. Let's just say that the bank was called Megabank. They wanted to block out all internet access, but still needed to access their own sites. Megabank, Mega Mortgage, Mega Financial, etc. So instead of whitelisting their sites, they just blocked any website that didn't begin with the letters MEGA. I just registered a website, put a chat app on the page, and had her access it at work. It was very dumb. People with boots on the ground experience, correct me if I'm wrong, but I'm pretty sure that's basically all that hacking is these days. Anyway, moving on. I have this fantasy, she typed one night, that one day I'd finish my call, turn around, and there you'd be, holding a rose. Haha, I typed back, too bad I can't do that. That would be just like a movie. I decided immediately that I had to do it. The last minute airfare booking, the side trip to Chicago for the visa, and the hotels would cost another quarter of my savings, but I knew it was going to be incredible. Within 72 hours, she finished her call, she turned around, and there I was, holding a rose. And she says, "Oh, you're here." "Yes," I responded, trying to hand over the rose. She doesn't take it and asks, "Why?" So I hid the rose under my arm and answered, "Because you told me to." She goes, "I don't remember saying that." Suddenly, we realized that the entire call center had placed their calls on hold and were looking at us. Everyone starts asking, "Oh, you're back. What are you doing here?" Her face turns red. I remember, we're supposed to be a secret. I've really messed up. When her shift ends at 7 a.m., she comes to my hotel to talk. I meet her in the lobby, and the clerk runs out red-faced, No, she cannot come in!" I turn to him and say, for the first time, "This is my girlfriend." He shouts, "This is not a place for you to bring your whores!" She is absolutely mortified as I get into a screaming match with the owner. I take my things and leave. She helps me find another hotel and just says, "It's late. I have to go home. Just wait here and I'll call you." So I waited for a week. I had just arrived. I didn't have a cell phone, and the hotel she picked didn't have Wi-Fi, so I stayed in this musty old windowless room staring at the hotel phone. I'd call her phone and hear, "Why are you calling me now? I'm trying to sleep." Or, "I'm with my family now. I can't talk." Eventually, I stopped getting any answer at all, so I waited. I had really messed up our first night, so I didn't want to not be there for her when she was ready to talk, and I knew that it could be any second. I couldn't even get in touch with her if I changed hotels. What if I left and she couldn't get in touch with me? I was afraid to even leave to eat. Any moment I stepped out could be the moment that she called. I ran across the street for takeout and made it the last day. Then that day became another, and that another. It was physically painful. I'd gone from talking to her all day to another continent to locked in a room a few minutes away, never speaking to anyone at all. I couldn't tell my family where I was. I couldn't ask anyone for advice. I've gone from feeling excited to feeling scared to feeling terrified to feeling broken and hurt. My skin is getting clammy. I'm losing weight. I'm losing sanity. On the 7th day, I needed answers. I called and called. As soon as I was disconnected, I called again. I did this for hours with no answer. I realized what a huge mistake I had made. She hadn't really wanted me here. Every second I was here was making things worse. I couldn't bear to be there, and I couldn't afford to be there because I was paying for both the hotel and my overseas apartment at the same time, and as long as I was there, I couldn't work to earn any more money. I needed to leave. Finally, I left the room. I went to an internet cafe. I booked a last-second ticket back home, another quarter of my savings, but I couldn't stand one more moment of waiting for a call that would never come. I went back to the hotel to pack. The call had come. She invited me to lunch. Lunch was great. She acted as though nothing had happened. She was smiling and laughing. She told me all about her week and shared the latest call center gossip. It was everything I'd hoped for when I came. When it was my turn to talk, I blurted out, "I'm leaving in a couple of hours." It did not go over well. The conversation was long and tense, but it came down to this. If I got on the plane, she was not following me. I might never see her again. "No," I said, "it doesn't have to be like that. Let's just stick to the original plan. I'll wait there until your visa arrives. It should be here soon, shouldn't it?" She looked at her feet. I'm like, you did apply for the visa, right? She had not applied for the visa. I got on the plane. As bad as the week alone in the hotel felt, the 15 minutes on the plane between boarding and takeoff were even worse. I was surrounded by strangers, but even more alone. My guts were twisted into knots and I couldn't breathe. Was I doing the right thing? Should I stay on the plane? I didn't have a choice. The ticket was non-refundable, and if I got off, I'm not even sure if I have enough money left in my account for another ticket, let alone have any money left over to live off of. But it felt wrong. This wasn't how the movie would have ended. I don't know what came over me in that moment. I saw the flight attendant closing the doors, and without thinking, I stood up. I shouted, "I'm getting off the plane!" And everybody on the plane looked at me like I'd said I was hijacking the plane. Way up front, the flight attendant was like, "What?" "I'm getting off the plane," I shouted again, being sure to enunciate because she was very far away. Everyone's still looking at me, and I'm like, "Oh, I forgot a part. Because I'm in love!" Okay, look, I know this sounds kind of fake and heavily corny, but let's remind ourselves this is a 26-year-old who's been working overseas for a while. Socially shy and self-describing dorky. I'm sure many of us beyond our 20s, or hell, those of us still in our 20s, can reference someone who would think like this. After a few awkward seconds of silence, a handful of passengers started the slowest, saddest pity clap I've ever heard. They'd seen the same movies as me and figured this was the part where they were supposed to clap, but had to hedge their bets because I might be a terrorist. I ran up to the door. Security was already there. "Sir," the agent said, "this plane needs to take off right now." "It can take off without me," I shouted defiantly. "No, it can't," he calmly explained. "If someone boards an airplane, screams, and runs off of it, we have to deplane everyone and bring in bomb-sniffing dogs and tear the plane apart to find out why." "Oh," I replied, thinking carefully, "but I'm in love, though." So I got detained. There's a reason this is always the last scene of the movie, because they don't want to show you what happens next. It's not pretty. I was in a little immigration cell for a while until an officer came in to talk to me. He asked me what I was planning. I told him I was in love, and I was going to get off the plane and run to the girl I like in the movies. He asked, "What movies?" I couldn't think of a specific example, so I just asked if he'd seen the last episodes of Friends. He had not. He explained, "You have a single entry visa. You've already used it. You can't re-enter the country." I sat in the tiny room for hours watching officials argue, seeing the departure board turn from green to red as more and more flights were delayed and the airport went haywire due to this potential terrorist threat. Now, eventually, the immigration officer stepped back in and sat down across from me. He let out a long, frustrated sigh. "We checked the plane," he said. "Everything is fine. Is this really about a girl?" "Yes," I responded. "Do you love her?" he asked. "Yes." The officer let out another long, frustrated, grumbling sigh and took a pen to my passport. "There's not really a protocol for this," he explained. "I'm just going to cancel this myself. When you leave India, just make sure you come talk to me and I'll stamp you out again. We can pretend like this never happened." "Thank you," I said as I tried to make sense of what he'd written. His handwriting made it look like it read "sexy officer," and I was like, is that his signature? But I later realized it said self-offload, which is what demanding to be let off the plane is actually called. "Well?" he asked. "Oh, well, what?" I replied. "Go to her." So I ran. Out of the airport, to the taxi stand. We sped across the city. I ran to the call center, up the stairs. She finished her call, turned around. There I was. "Oh," she sighed. "You're here again." So yeah, I got dumped pretty soon after that. Getting home took the rest of my money. Every last cent of it. Sexy officer was true to his word. He pretended like none of it ever happened. My grand romantic gesture, right after the movies, hadn't worked like I'd hoped. I'm glad. I'm married now, and we try a different approach called open and honest communication. Now, we talk about our lives and fantasies, but we also discuss the differences between the two. We make decisions together that reflect both our dreams and our realities, and it's worked out pretty great. I never got my movie romance, but I've got the real thing now. That's even better. That is what we in the business call a learning experience, and God, is it expensive! I'll be honest, I'm surprised the comments aren't being more, armchair psychologist on who is the more abusive person in this whole situation. With one side of perception of things, from the woman's perception at least, it comes across that maybe he was a creep, and she was not comfortable, she didn't feel safe around him. And, he'd wait for ages, constantly calling and harassing her. She's telling him to stop calling her. He keeps turning up. Are you sure she was into you, man, or she just felt safe with you as a platonic friend? Look, I don't know Indian culture, but is holding hands anything that deep? Did she love you, or did she just see you as an escape from her family? Some would consider her that she's a bitch for that kind of thing, but I don't agree. She never said she wanted to be in an actual relationship with you. Okay, wait, no, hang on, scratch that. Like, there were some moments where she was confessing some suggestive things. What do you think, though? Do you think this person dangerously crossing boundaries here in a social aspect of things, or could it be like this, where it's just not understanding the Indian culture, where it's more about saving face and not taking these sort of social risks? Apparently, romantic comedies from India end up being more about convincing her parents to like you than doing grand romantic gestures. So, for all we know, maybe she actually was genuinely into him, but he just kept approaching it the wrong way. I imagine it's like a guy trying to prove to a woman that he's worth dating because he keeps pulling out the measuring tape and flexing his bicep and saying, "See, it's got an extra inch of width now." Now to a story that began a few months back with some recent updates in late December. Friend wants to use me as her backup ATM. So next month, I, female, am going away on vacation with a longtime friend, also female. We are going to the Caribbean for 5 nights. It is not all-inclusive, so we will be responsible for paying for food, drinks, and any activities. She asked me how much I was bringing in cash. I said $300 plus cash plus debit and credit cards. She told me she is going to bring $300 cash, but no debit or credit cards. She said she is on a budget, and $300 is her limit. I explained that comes around to only $60 per day. This is not one of the cheaper Caribbean islands, so food and drink alone won't leave her with much left over. I reminded her that she needs to factor in cabs, incidentals, or any activities we may decide to do. And you never know if an emergency will come up where she will need money. She says to me, "That is why I have you," and started to laugh. That infuriated me to no end. I tell her that we are both adults who are responsible for our own selves. It would be one thing if she lost her purse and needed money. I would float her money before she even had the time to ask. But to purposely use me as her backup ATM is not going to work. I told her now that I know what she is up to. I'm not going to go along with it. If she runs out of money, she will just be assed out and hungry. She needs to bring her cards with her for her own good. Well, she is now telling me I am too harsh and she will bring extra money but no cards. I told her to do what she wants, but if there is an emergency, she is on her own. So unsurprisingly, everyone is excited to know when this great friend turns into a choosing beggar. Yeah, my friend brought a jar of peanut butter and a bag of pot to a 3-day music festival and didn't pitch in for gas or anything of ours. He ate. He is not our friend anymore. But here's the thing. Just how serious was she by saying this? That is why I have you. Could that just be a response to OP clearly being more organized about things? And that's why she has OP around, to be the more organized one. There's a few quick things the OP does answer though in the comments. Will you make sure you don't put your card down for the room so she doesn't charge things to it? OP takes that on board and ensures that she will not put her card down for the room. Especially as it turns out, it was actually the friend that booked it too, so technically she would need to bring her card. OP unfortunately can't book their own room because, yes, as mentioned, the friend has already got the room booked. And it doesn't really make sense to try and, reprimand your friend for stinging off you by letting them stinge off you and get a nice room for themselves. And in case anyone's curious, this might have been pressured by OP to go to this fancy trip and the friend actually can't afford it but wants to go along anyway. That kind of experience where your friend invites you to a fancy restaurant when you actually can't afford it but you don't want to, feel ashamed of that. Well, she has the money. She is just cheap. She just wants to keep to a budget and thinks this is the way. Okay, so 12 days later, we come to the update. How does this confrontation simmer? To go over some good pointers, some of you said that the hotel would want a credit card on file from the person who made the reservation. Well, my friend was the one who booked the vacation. She put the whole thing on her credit card because she wanted the card points. I told her because the reservation was booked through the third-party app, the hotel would need the original card used to make the reservation. So she was on the hook to bring her credit card. I have no idea if that is true or not, but it sounded good based on what you all commented, so she was not happy that her own greed got her. But at least she brought a credit card. Now, others mentioned that she was going to sulk, and sulk she did. When we got to the airport, I told her I was not going to spend the vacation in her misery, so let's hash it out right now. She said that my tone was very rude, as if I was accusing her of trying to mooch off me. She was. I told her to put herself in my shoes. She was deliberately not being responsible and told me to my face I was her backup plan and laughed about it. It made me feel used and put upon. She apologized, and I apologized for being so harsh. Some of you said she would try to be content with cutting corners. Well, cabs were prohibitively expensive on the island, and they didn't take credit cards. So, she looked up how to take the local buses. I was fine with that until we waited 45 minutes in the heat for a bus to take us to the mall. Island time. Yeah, we only took cabs after that. A few mentioned that she would go through her cash in the first 2 days. You were close. 2.5 days. There were several markets with local jewelry and crafts that she absolutely loved, and they only took cash. So she ran through her money rather quickly. She only brought her credit card, not her debit card. So, as someone suggested, I made her Zelle me right then and there the money I took out of the ATM for her. She paid for the exchange and ATM fees. In case you don't know, Zelle is like Venmo. Oh, but she tried it with the meals. She ordered something big and wanted to split the bill evenly. Normally, I would not nitpick about that, but I just didn't want her to feel like she still got one over me in any way. Since she used her credit card for meals to save the cash she had, I paid what I owed in cash, and she paid the rest, her higher portion, with her credit card. Overall, we had a good time. We did a few excursions, had a shopping and beach time, and relaxed. She even told me it was a good thing she brought her credit card. Things only got weird when I asked her to Zelle me right then and there at the ATM before I gave her the cash, but she knew why I was being so hard-nosed about it. But here's where things get really satisfying. So I'm not able to source the original comment about it myself, but OP mentions how, when talking about this to one of their mutual friends, Opie was accused of being mean and stingy. But when coming to December for the next update, that mutual friend themselves faces some hilarious irony. So several months ago, I posted about my friend Z planning to go on vacation without taking any credit or debit cards with the intent of using me as her backup ATM. One of her friends later told me that I was mean and stingy and how I handled it. I'll link to the original post here. So Z is now going on a Christmas cruise with a group of her friends. Her cabin mate, the same one who told me that I was mean and stingy, just texted me about Z's plan to only bring cash, no credit or debit cards for their upcoming cruise. Since the cruise is all-inclusive, including unlimited drink packages, Z feels she can get away with it this time. The cabin mate wants to know what did I do to get Z to bring her a credit card on my vacation with her? I've never laughed so hard in my life. I haven't answered her yet. I want to respond, "Oh, don't be so mean and stingy," but I'm electing to stay out of it. I just wanted to share that update. And extremely shortly after, okay, I gave in. I wrote her back, "Just cover for her. Don't be so mean and stingy." To which she responded, "I deserve that. I'm sorry." I mean, if that doesn't show that that mutual friend is just an A-plus person, the ability to just accept the humility like that, good on him. Second edit, cabin mate ended up putting her credit card down for Z's sail and sign card, the card you use to pay for stuff on the cruise. I heard she isn't a happy camper right now. I hope they can pull through and enjoy the cruise. Yeah, so it seems this mutual friend has failed where OP succeeded. And then finally, in an update a few days later, Z had sent in the sail and sign card info prior to the cruise, but she didn't bring her physical credit card with her to the cruise, so they couldn't validate it. So cabin mate put her card down for her. Z paid her back when they got home, but cabin mate is still salty about that and other things that happen on the cruise and isn't talking to Z at the moment. Would I be the a-hole if I turned down a well-paying wedding gig for my band? So I'm 27. Back in high school, I knew the bride. I was into her, but she never acted on it. The most she ever did was send some minor mixed signals. She found out that I was into her when one of our mutual friends who had confided in me was drunk. Now she's also 27. She recently got engaged to a guy who appears to be an inch or less shorter than me. Anyway, I'm the lead singer in a local band that's trying to make it big. And earlier today, I got an email from her little boyfriend asking if we would be the wedding band. We've done some weddings before. What would be really emotionally satisfying for me would be to take the gig and then do songs like "Donna Please" by Steve Perry. Some samples of the lyrics: "It's wrong to do, he's still with you, this won't go away, close the door, turn the page, I can't let you go, if he wants you tonight, will you tell him no?" But I know that not only would that make me the a-hole, but it would get my band blackballed and ruin any potential career. That's also the same reason I won't do what Adam Sandler did in The Wedding Singer. But I don't really want to go sing happy songs celebrating them being together for obvious reasons. At the same time, I don't want to turn down a decently paying gig when my band is struggling. So, is it okay for me to turn down the wedding gig, either by making up an excuse ahead of time or by suddenly getting sick the day before? Or would I be the a-hole if I didn't put the motley and do it anyway? Quick folks, analyze it. Recently engaged to a guy who appears to be an inch or less shorter than me. Okay, thank you for that very relevant info. Now, give me the relative height of every other character in this story. Otherwise, I cannot decide who the a-hole is. So, obviously, yeah, you're the a-hole. High school was like half your life ago and you're pining over a girl you didn't even date. Grow up. I'd say she's moved on, but you never caught her interest in the first place. Ouch. Oh, those women and their audacity to not see in high school how far he could have made it by the time they wanted to be married. She could have all of that. You know, his struggling band. Oh, how admirable. Now, despite the waves of Yatar, I do think there is still some validity in what he wants to do here. OP still has feelings for this woman, even if they're not something he's ever going to act on, and that enough is justification to not take this gig. Like, as much of a spiteful little ball of anger management issues that he is here, it still seems like the best course of action to just not at all be involved with this person or their wedding. Sure, you are basically destroying potential income for your band, but let's be real, if you got paid for this and weren't able to perform as well as you could, I think that would be more detrimental to your band's career. I think you accidentally put a 2 before the 7 when stating your age. Anyway, friends, might end things there. Thank you as always for listening and watching. Check out some more weird decisions in the next video, and until next time, you be good, love your face, and I'll see you then. Bye-bye.